Hello again everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are taking a look at the FlightFX Cirrus SF50 Vision Jet. The aircraft released just a couple of days ago, and with it being another FlightFX product, I'm hoping it's going to be another really nice addition to the sim. Although published through FlightFX, I gather that the Cirrus jet is made by a different developer, so we may see a difference in quality. We'll obviously find out about that as we go, aiming to take a full review look at the aircraft here today. Our jet is currently here on the ground in Aspen, where we're just getting ready to return home after a weekend of skiing up in the mountains here. For our flight today, we're going to be heading back in time a couple of days on our outbound leg towards Aspen. We'll be departing out of Sedona late afternoon, taking the aircraft out towards the northeast, up towards the Rocky Mountains, arriving into Aspen around sunset, so hopefully that should make for quite a beautiful arrival. As usual, we'll be carrying out a full flight in the aircraft, all the way through from a cold and dark start right through to shutdown, trying to get a feel for what the Cirrus jet has to offer. Just before we do that though, we'll take a look at a few details here on the ground in Aspen, just covering off some of the features of the Cirrus jet. And not wishing to get too far ahead of myself here, but overall again it is another very nice product from FlightFX. As always, ladies and gents, if you do enjoy the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. The SF50, obviously quite an interesting little aircraft. It's a single engine business jet essentially. I would imagine it's a bit of a rich man's toy, and FlightFX have certainly given us a couple of options there that really go to enhance that overall experience. So once again, we'll just briefly take a look at those before we get our flight underway. As just discussed, the Vision Jet does come with a number of options in terms of configuration. You'll have noticed already perhaps we have all of the usual fixtures and fittings in terms of chocks, protective covers, things of that nature. We can also open up the main cabin door as well as the luggage compartment door. And as discussed, a nice little touch here from the developers, you can actually adjust what's stored in the luggage compartment. So for example, if you're planning a bit of a family getaway, you can have your typical luggage stored down the back. If you're going to hit the golf course, play a few holes, then there's plenty of room down the back for your golf clubs as well. And lastly, as you can see here, we've got our snowboarding equipment packed up and ready to go home. We'll see more of the external modelling throughout the flight, but as you can see already, really excellent level of attention to detail. The modelling is pretty immaculate, and the same goes for the texturing. There's no fuzziness anywhere, all of the texturing's done really nicely. Even down to the decals there on the luggage door, which rather helpfully also point out no live animals are to be stored in the compartment. As with the real-world aircraft, the interior of the jet is also configurable. There are three optional cabin layouts. Firstly, we have executive, just the two seats down the back with a centre console. That gives you a little bit more room as well for any luggage down the back behind the seats. Next we have the complete layout, where we have three full-sized adult passenger seats as well as two child seats there down the back. And lastly we have the family layout, which still has three full-sized seats, but they're a little bit narrower in width, and as a result you have slightly more room down the centre aisle. For our flight today, we own a business jet. We've just spent the weekend skiing in Aspen, so presumably we don't have any kids to worry about. We'll go with the executive setup. Once again, the detailing in the cabin in terms of the modelling, and I think particularly the texturing, is excellent. And once again, although I do believe the two products are made by different developers, it seems to me that the level of quality of the Cirrus jet is very reminiscent of the Honda jet. One other nice little touch in the cabin, there's also an onboard screen available. We can pull that down. Functionality there is pretty limited, of course. There's no option, for example, to watch anything on the screen, but nevertheless it's a nice touch, and it just goes to make the SF50 feel all that more fancy. And speaking of fancy, the Vision Jet's cockpit's certainly very slick in its design. Obviously we'll be taking more of a look at that throughout the flight. During the flight itself, we're not going to be taking a look at every system in depth, so we'll take the time now just to briefly look through all of the available options and configurations of the aircraft. Get a bit of a feel as well for the level of depth that's been given to the Cirrus jet systems, and again overall it's done very nicely. As you can see, we have two main screens, we have three multifunction displays as well, and again the modelling texturing very nice throughout. Firstly we have the map, we have the traffic settings, weather functionality there as well. We can build up the flight plan, that's very user friendly. You can also sync up Navgraph charts to the jet. In terms of aircraft systems, we have various status pages. So here we have the jet's status. We also have an engine and fuel page, an electrical power page, and again very nice level of depth, systems modelling. Ice protection, looks as though the enviro and pressure page isn't modelled. And finally we have the landing gear page. We can carry out systems tests on the aircraft, we'll take a look at that later on. Next, coming to the checklist page, we have a full and pretty comprehensive selection there of checklists for the aircraft. On the VAMS page, we have the option to remove all of our static elements. We can change the jet status through from cold and dark through to ready for takeoff. There's a couple of config options there as well. In terms of utilities, we have setup options for both the avionics. Here you can change, for example, the UTC time. Initialization, again, we'll be taking a look at that throughout the flight. So just a very brief overview there, but as you can see, once again, the level of customization given to the jet is very nice. Although the aircraft does make use of the default Garmin 3000, there is a lot of customization there, so it really doesn't feel like a default jet. I gather as well that the aircraft will ultimately be compatible with the updated G3000 once working title have worked their magic there. So again, I think a very nice aircraft, a very nice product in terms of its system's depth and functionality. With that done, we are once again going to be heading back in time a couple of days to Sedona. We'll find the jet on the ground late afternoon and we'll get ourselves ready to go. So welcome to the beautifully rendered cockpit of the FlightFX Cirrus Vision Jet. We're now back on the ground in Sedona, very pleasant afternoon here. We just closed up the aircraft door, so we'll get everything ready to go for our departure over towards Aspen. First things first, the battery masters can go on, both 1 and 2. We'll just wait for the Garmins to initialize. You can hear really nice sounds on the aircraft, and that's definitely a feature of the Cirrus jet overall. Anyway, coming down to the VAMS page, firstly we'll make sure we've removed our chocks and our protective covers. We'll come back to the home screen. You'll notice, much as with the FlightFX Honda jet, this aircraft is definitely a little bit of a flying iPad. Everything is touchscreen, very automated as well, very nice and easy to use. We'll come down to the utilities page and we'll go to initialization. Firstly, checking our database status. I do have Navigraph charts integrated onto the aircraft. You'll see those later on. Definitely worth noting, a strong note here, that you do actually need a separate payware subscription, of course, to Navigraph if you want to use the charts on board the aircraft. Anyway, nav database is checked. System tests, we'll carry out the pre-flight test.
Higher, 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 higher.
And again, an excellent level of attention to detail.
Stall, stall, stall.
So the pre-flight test is complete. Once again, we'll go back onto the initial fuel. Here you can actually sync the current fuel on board to the aircraft system, so nice and easy there. We have 149 gallons on board. Just scrolling down. Weight and balance, we have 180 pounds in the left seat, same in the right. According to the manual, you actually need to add in mass as well for any seats fitted on board the jet, since they're easily removable, so they're not considered part of the aircraft weight. But just for the sake of simplicity, we're not going to do that today. And in terms of our luggage, 60 pounds of luggage on board. And lastly, for the flight plan then, so departing out of Sedona, which is Kilo, Sierra, Echo, Zulu, Sedona. En route waypoints, initially the India November Whiskey VOR, Winslow, then on towards Romeo Sierra Kilo.
Number 37 extra, continue taxi to runway 33 via Alpha.
And there we're looking for the Rattlesnake VOR, and then on towards Hotel Bravo Uniform.
Continue taxi 33 via Alpha, November 237 extra.
And again we have duplicates there, but we're looking for the Blue Mesa VOR. Lastly, in terms of our destination, again it's going to be Aspen, so Kilo Alpha Sierra Echo. And we'll hit enter. So the flight plan's already built up. You can see again, very easy, very straightforward to use. We're not going to be flying departures today. It's a beautiful day out there, so we'll just fly a visual departure off runway 03. So flight plan is initialized. And in terms of our initialization process, you can see we have all of our fields now ticked. So we'll accept our initialization. Next, we'll come onto the checklist page and we'll start running through the checklists for the power up of the aircraft. So the pre-flight inspection has been completed. Door is latched. We can just tick those off as we go. Parking brake is set. Battery 1 and 2 switches both on. Generator 1 and 2 switches are both selected on. External GPU not available. And for the FADEC there, verifying that we have either channel A or B displayed, and with the percentage thrust indication, we have channel A and 0% thrust. Onto the engine start itself, we'll just get our headphones on before we start up. So again, coming down to the VAMS page, we'll go to Bose, and we can select the headphones on. Nice little touch there. It'd be nice if you could just click on the headphones to select them on, but nevertheless. You can see as well, active noise cancelling is also model, which is great, but we'll leave that off today just so you can hear the sounds of the aircraft that little bit better. Anyway, strobe light is on. KASE messages, just the probe heats there, we're expecting to see that for now. Thrust lever is back at idle, brakes again are set. This has to be one of the easiest jets to start up, you'll see just how easy it is in a moment's time, but first we select 3 to run. Checking there that we have the fuel pump KASE message, which we do. And you can hear audibly there as well, the fuel pump running. Also verifying there's no engine start bat temp or engine start volts KASE message, which we don't have, so we can verify that. And now to start the engine, all we need to do is hit the engine start stop. So monitoring the engine as it runs up. At 25% N2, we're ensuring we have a positive N1 indication. And we do. ITT coming up, so is the oil pressure. Once again, excellent sounds from the jet. And looks as though we have everything in the green, so a good start there. The engine start then, the engine instruments are checked. Engine icing protection not required for now. ECS control panel. We'll set the selector through to auto, temperature. Keep nice and cool, and we'll just leave ECS disabled on for now. External GPU has been disconnected, oxygen master switch is on. Again, nice sound effects there. Avionics initialization, all units have been set. Caps pin, you remove the pin as part of the VAMS page protection covers. Unfortunately the caps isn't modelled on the jet, which is a touch of a shame, but nevertheless. Again, really nice effort from FlightFX. So caps pin has been removed, passenger briefing not required. Seatbelts are secured. And the bleed switch. Interestingly, the checklist calls for the bleed switch to go through to bleed, but currently it shows fresh air and max. I believe this is the correct switch, but we'll go through to max. And the before taxi checks, COM and nav GPS, everything's set there for now. We'll tune up the VORs later on. ATIS has been obtained, so altimeter can set. We've got 3004 inches. Transponder, squawking 1200. Heading and initial out, we'll set the heading bug once we're out at the runway. We'll just do that loosely for now, so again planning on runway 03. And for the altitude, climbing up to an altitude of 15,000 feet for our flight today.
1 Juliet, just grab the opposite direction RJ, they're exiting the runway, wind 1603, runway 15, clear land.
1, relax, Juliet.
We should be airborne for about an hour overall, so a nice low cruise altitude. We'll take in the scenery as we go. There's 15,000 feet set. Flight controls, again just checking they're full and free. We've got full up, full down, and neutral. And on the ailerons, full left. A little bit tricky to see the flight controls, full right and neutral. And again, full left, full right on the rudders. So flight controls are free. Trim we want 6 units up. And there we have 6 units in the green band. Flaps can come through to the takeoff position, so 50%. And indicating 50%. And just visually confirming there as well. Flaps are set. Electric roll trim is set neutral. Press the toga button. And you can see we now have the roll mode there on the FMA. KASE messages, just the probe heat there as well at the moment. And again, seatbelts are secure. The before taxi checks, we're just going to leave the brakes on for now. And for the takeoff checks themselves, we'll run through those once we're down at the holding point.
37 X-ray, monitor tower 118.85.
My monitor now. November 12 Juliet, left turn Alpha 4, join Alpha contact ground 1 off.
Left turn Alpha 4, 612 Juliet, contact ground.
Says 4794, runway 33, line up and wait opposite direction, CNOM 8 miles per hour.
So we're now down at holding point Alpha 8 for runway 03. Just set the jet up a little bit more here for the departure, so landing lights are on, ready to line up. And for the nav radios, we just tuned up the Winslow VOR there on nav 1, the Rattlesnake VOR on nav 2. Running through our normal takeoff checks then, we're not going to run these out in real time, we'll just discuss the takeoff ahead of time. So we'll hold the jet on the brakes, coming through to takeoff power on the thrust levers. Obviously we'll check the engine instruments there as we come up on the thrust. Once we have full thrust,
69 on request standby.
we'll release the brakes, looking to rotate between 80 to 90 knots. Initially pitching up to around 5 degrees, and once we have positive climb and we're clear of the runway, we'll get the gear up. As discussed earlier, once we're through 115 knots and we're above 1,000 feet, we'll take in the flaps. And for the airspeed, we're going to climb initially at 180 knots, we'll get ourselves up to 15,000 feet. And once we're established in the cruise, we'll let the auto thrust take over and fly us in FMS speed. So that's the normal takeoff checklist complete. We'll leave the climb checklist up in preparation for the departure. Up brake can come off. Again, the lights are set, transponder is set to out. We're all clear on final. No traffic upwinds. Visibility in the jet is excellent out of the front, but a little bit more limited out of the sides. So far though, the Cirrus jet very much reminding me of the Honda jet. Excellent level of quality. My one gripe with the Honda jet was I found the flight model to be a little bit sensitive, a little bit twitchy, so I'm interested to see here what we get with the Vision jet. Noticeably the aircraft actually taxis really nicely, it has a real sense of weight to it. So onto the brakes, holding the aircraft on the brakes and coming all the way through to take off thrust. Engine temperatures and pressures looking good. We have takeoff thrust there on the KASE messages. Off the brakes. And away we go. So far the aircraft tracking very straight as you would expect. Airspeed's alive. Rudder response feels pretty reasonable actually, which is nice. As discussed, looking to rotate around 80 to 90 knots, just coming through 80 now, so we'll slowly start coming back on the stick. Fairly heavy in pitch there, or at least needing quite a bit of pitch. We do have positive climb, clear the runway, the gear can come up. Just going to pitch for 10 degrees here initially until we're clear of the terrain. And looking good now, so we'll pitch back towards 5 degrees. And again, now we're nicely clear of the terrain, we'll come back towards 5 degrees, just come up through 10,000 feet, get the landing lights off. And as discussed, we'll let that speed now build up to around 180 knots.
Awesome, Boo Boo at 10,000, clear for the ILS 34 right approach, United 293.
So we'll just maintain the heading here till we're centered up on the CDI. Running through the climb checklist, max continuous thrust is set, engine parameters are checked. Cabin pressure, I'm not sure whether or not we can monitor that. I assume in reality here we'd come down to the aircraft systems page, but it looks as though the environment and pressure page is not currently modelled. Just turning back here onto our flight plan course. Certainly the Vision Jet flies more nicely than the Honda Jet. I find the flight model to be much less twitchy in pitch. It still feels fairly light, fairly sensitive, but again it is a pretty light jet, so that's probably to be expected. It's more of a joy to hand fly, I would say, than the Honda Jet overall. So nicely established now on our heading, just trimming for that 5-degree pitch angle. The jet trims out pretty nicely as well. So we'll say we've monitored the cabin pressure. Ice protection, again, is set as required. Maybe the click spot here for the checklist is just a touch fiddly. And altimeter we'll leave on 3004. We're only going to be climbing up to 15,000 feet today, so we'll stay on the QNH. That's our climb checklist complete. We'll bring up the map display. And for now we can take that through to full. So we're nicely established here on our flight plan track. Seems as though the jet's more happy to climb at 150 knots, so we'll just keep the speed for now. And we'll just continue the climb here manually up to 15,000 feet. We'll get the autopilot in just to test that briefly. So we're tracking now inbound towards the Winslow VOR. You can see there we've got about 40 miles to run, showing about 12 minutes to run at our current speed. And just coming up through 13,000 feet, so another 2,000 feet here in the climb. In terms of our fuel, we've got 140 gallons now on board. We're burning 102 gallons per hour. About an hour and a half's worth of fuel, but obviously that's going to come up as we bring the thrust back. There is still that slight twitchiness in pitch. I'm just putting in very small inputs there on the stick, and you can see we're still oscillating slightly in pitch, but that's very typical of the sim. And again, I think the jet is pretty nice to hand fly overall. So 1,000 to go, just coming up on 15,000 feet. We'll get ready to level off. We'll leave max continuous thrust initially just to let that speed build up. And then, as I say, we'll get the auto throttle in. Nice as well to have the auto throttle. Again, the Honda Jet doesn't have that option if memory serves me correctly.
You're on 4710 there, approach is going to be ILS 34 right via the west side. You can delete all speeds though, thanks for your help.
Just getting ready to level off.
Commuter 4870, once you're slow to 210, maintain 1000, thanks.
Okay, 1210 on the speed now, and then we'll go down to 1,048.70.
And established now up at 15,000 feet, speed building up. Again, the jet trims pretty nicely. We'll come into heading and out, and we'll get the autopilot in. Just adjust our heading slightly here to bring us back onto the CDI bar, and then we'll go into nav. So the autopilot engaging pretty smoothly there, although we have captured at 15,100. So we'll just come into vertical speed. And back into out, 15,000. You can see there's speed building. Again, we do have an auto throttle, so we'll set the speed for that.
Commuter 4878, connect approach 120.8, let them know you're slowed early, thanks.
120.8, let them know 4872.
Just going to take us a little while here to scroll through to 250 knots. You can choose to either manually set the speed or have the jet set the speed for you by the FMS calculator speed. So again, nice level of fidelity overall.
Approach Cirrus 5677, 24.5 descend in your logger, 300 knots to point, and you have Delta.
So there's 250 knots. And you can see we have the selection there between FMS or manual. We'll leave it in FMS and we'll go to auto thrust. And the aircraft, of course, now managing the throttle to maintain 250 knots.
S5677 there, approach, runway 35 right, thanks.
How's that?
Again, we'll just adjust our heading slightly. We're almost on flight plan track. As the thrust rolls off there, coming back towards around 90 gallons per hour, which is what the manual suggests is about right for the Cirrus jet.
Endeavour for Keyline 4710, just want to verify you said 34 right?
And nicely on the CDI bar now, so we'll come into nav.
Keyline 4710, affirmative, thanks.
Alright, thanks.
So overall the autopilot seems to be behaving itself pretty well. I suspect they're still using the default sober autopilot more or less, but I gather that did have some upgrades as a result of Sim Update 11. But the aircraft's certainly behaving itself quite nicely. Again, pretty easy to fly manually there on the departure. Just run through our cruise checks. The thrust lever is set as required. We're using the auto throttle. Ice protection again set as required. Engine instruments are checked. That's our cruise checklist complete. For the ECS, I assume the light there, as it's an ECS disable switch, means we currently have the system disabled, so we'll come through, we'll turn the ECS on. And nicely established now on flight plan track, so we'll just center up our heading bug. Once again, we'll bring the map through to the full display. And we'll continue to track our way now out towards the India November Whiskey VOR. After that, as we said, it's going to be the Rattlesnake VOR, then Hotel Bravo uniform. Overall, it's about an hour in the cruise here out towards Aspen. It should be rather beautiful for our arrival into Aspen. Obviously, lots of snow coverage around. Getting fairly late towards the evening by the time we arrive. As usual, we'll enjoy the external model of the Cirrus jet as we make our way over. Anyway, we'll continue in the cruise, again about an hour in the cruise, so I'll come back to you about 40 minutes into the flight as we're getting ready for our top of descent and arrival in towards Aspen.
Skywest 5758 there in approach, expect ILS runway 35 right, thanks.
Well, expected, and we still haven't been cleared for the arrival. 5758.
Alright, let's do that then. Sky 5758, you can descend via for 35 right, delete the speeds though, just maintain 280 knots.
Alright, descend via the arrival and delete speeds, maintain 280 knots. Sky 5758, thanks.
At 1994 there in approach, expect ILS 35 right, delete speeds, maintain 280 knots.
Okay, delete speeds, maintain 280 knots and expect an ILS 35 right, United 1994.
Roger, turn right heading 330, intercept the localizer 35 right.
Right, 330, intercept the localizer 35 right, United 2292.
1,800 for 11 descending via the AL3.
Southwest 3395, Denver approach, fine ILS 35 right.
35 right, we're slowed to 230.
Roger. United 92, maintain 900,000 until Dory, cleared ILS 35 right approach.
900,000 to Dory, cleared for the ILS 35 right approach, United 2292.
Close approach, go 5329, 14,000, saying 13,000, heading 275, 35 left.
So 5329, Denver approach. Roger, fly heading 290.
Heading 290, Scouts 5329.
For key line 4710.
Gas 5677, amend the altitude, maintain 16,000.
Maintain 16,000, Sky 5677.
Okay, so we're just approaching our way inbound towards Aspen. As you can see, we've positioned ourselves here out towards the east, just so we can make a visual approach here down the valley, the last of the daylight. We're going to be making a visual approach here onto runway 33. Aspen's located at around 8,000 feet. We're descending down for now towards 10,000 feet until we're visual with the airfield. Just doing a vertical speed of minus 1,000 feet per minute, and in heading here, just manoeuvring ourselves down the valley. We've still got the auto throttle managing the speed for now, and it looks like we're maintaining around 180 knots. We'll run through our descent checks. So thrust lever is set as required. Landing in field elevation. I noticed here during the cruise we do actually have cabin pressure information, so we have a differential pressure there of 2 psi. Landing elevation is indicating correctly. Cabin altitude is around 8,100 feet. Ice protection systems are set as required. Altimeter, we have a QNH now of 3005. Seats and seatbelts are secure. That's the descent checklist complete. ECS disable can go on. The approach briefing, again, just manoeuvring ourselves down the valley. Actually now visual with Aspen, just off the nose. Just come slightly left here on the heading. So as I say, just manoeuvring visually here down the valley for a visual approach onto runway 33.
Alpha, Juliet. Sky 5669.
Seats are secure, ice protection systems are set as required. Landing light will set on. Slightly early here, just coming through 13,000. Flaps will come through to 50% later on, and airspeed we're looking for 140 knots initially as we come down final approach. So as we're visual, we'll fly the rest of the approach manually. The autopilot can come out, and same for the auto throttle. Looks like we're a little bit high currently, so we'll just come back off the power. And we'll take some speed brake here as well, just to help get the jet down. So we've got Aspen itself off our 1 o'clock, the airfield just out to the west of that. You might just about be able to make out the terminal buildings there. For anybody that's completed the Aspen landing challenge within the sim, this may well look very familiar. Basically, we're just going to fly overhead the town here, and then we'll make a curved right-hand base onto runway 33. Speed just rolling off slightly there, doing 150 knots, but quite happy with our rate of descent, so we'll leave everything as is for now. Below 150 knots we can take the gear down. We'll hold the gear for now. We'll start configuring for the approach just as we come onto base. So again, Aspen located at around 8,000 feet above sea level, just coming through 11,000, about another 3,000 feet here in the descent.
And we've got 419, verify, continuous approach.
We've got out there on the FMA, we're not using the flight director anymore, so we'll take that off. And just coming down through 10,000, landing lights on, speed is good. Below 150, we'll take the gear down. And we'll come through to 50% on the flaps. Happy now in terms of our vertical profile, so we'll get rid of the speed brakes. Speed rolling back towards 120.
Right, thank you.
So landing gear we have down 3 greens. In terms of our before landing checks, we're not going to click through the checklist there just because that's going to be a little bit fiddly for us right now, trying to fly the aircraft. But landing gear is down 3 greens, flaps are set. Cabin pressure differential, we're looking for 0 PSI, currently showing 1, we'll check that again on the ground. Windshield anti-ice is off, autopilot is off, airspeed is checked, and that's the landing check is complete. So it's still got a fairly high vertical speed here at the moment, just to get us back down onto profile. And again, just make a gentle curved right-hand approach here onto runway 33.
That was 3229, clear to DFW, the wind's 9 departure. And then as well, on departure, climb and maintain 16,000. Expect flight level 370, then 10 minutes. 123.8 will be...
No pappy, I think we're still just a touch high at the moment, but just about coming back onto our profile. And just rolling out onto final. Looking at the windsock there, we've got a bit of crosswind out from the left. Yeah, looking nice now for the touchdown zone, speed is good. Actually got quite a crosswind there. Off the throttle. Definitely having to fight that wind just a little bit. Aircraft floating quite a bit there. Plenty of runway though. We'll slowly start coming onto the brakes, looking to vacate off of the next right. And just braking a little bit more heavily now to make the exit. So we're just clearing runway 33 here off at exit Alpha 3. We'll run through the aft-line check so the flaps can come up. Anti-ice systems are off. Pro-peak switch is selected off. Again, we'll just work our way through the checklist. External lights, we'll take the landing light off. Leave the strobes on for now until we've got the engine shut down. Brakes have been checked. That's the aft-line checks complete.
Scout 4794, runway 33, line up and wait.
So we'll just make our way in towards the terminal here.
Scout 4794, wind 1803, runway 33, clear for takeoff.
We'll get ourselves parked up, get the jet shut down.
XHF 119, contact departure 123.8.
Onto the brakes. Park brake is on. And running through the shutdown checklist, the thrust lever is at idle. Engine ice protection is off. Bleed switch can go back to the fresh air setting. Oxygen master is off. Lights, we'll just leave the strobes on again until we've got the engine shut down. And again, nice easy shutdown. We'll just move the engine selector through to the off position. And we'll hit the engine start stop. N2, just waiting for that to come down through 24%, which we now have. We'll get the strobe light off. Caps pin, so we'll come back to the VAMS page. And we'll go through to the statics, we'll get the chocks in, thanks to the ground crew. Covers and protectors can go on. And as you can see there, that installs as well the caps pin. It would be nice perhaps to be able to manually select that. Anyway, caps pin has been inserted for the shutdown. Generators 1 and 2 both off. Battery 1 and 2, we'll just run through the rest of the checklist here. Obviously we're going to lose that once we select the battery off. So battery masters 1 and 2 off, park brake is set. The egress door pin will install momentarily. And we'll get the airplane secured up. So there you go guys, I do hope you enjoyed our outing in the FlightFX SF50 Cirrus Vision Jet. Without a doubt, another very nice offering from FlightFX. It's great to see that they're continuing to deliver us high quality products at very reasonable prices. I would say that in short, the Vision Jet is every bit as much as good as the Honda Jet, perhaps with just a slightly nicer flight model. It's actually pretty hard to find all that much to fault on the aircraft, but as usual we'll try and work our way through a few positives and negatives. Starting with the negatives then, and again my list is pretty short here, so not a whole lot I can say, but of course that's great. Overall, again, I did really like the flight model, but it did feel to me as though the aircraft oscillated around in pitch a little bit much at times, particularly under trim. That is, of course, fairly typical behaviour in the sim though, so I'm not going to hold the aircraft to account too much on that one. Another negative, at least to my mind with the product, currently it only comes with 3 livery options. Not a huge issue, of course, I'm sure we'll see more liveries as well available over on flightsim.to, for example, but 3 liveries is pretty limited by today's standards. And purely a personal taste thing, but I didn't really like any of the livery options that were available. You basically get an all-white livery, an all-black livery, and then the livery that you saw here today. Once again though, the quality of the liveries is absolutely excellent, very sharp texturing. So really, the limited selection is of course a minor gripe overall. Systems depth very comprehensive. There were just 1 or 2 pages not modelled there on the multifunction displays. I don't know how many pages are missing versus the real-world aircraft, but there were 1 or 2 that you could see were modelled but not clickable. And checklist selection is reduced versus the real-world jet, but again, pretty comprehensive overall, and it covers all of the primary phases of flight. All of my other negatives, very minor in nature, and really just little features that we've seen on other products that it would be nice to see here. It seemed to me there was no option to visibly display either the passengers or the co-pilot in the jet, which would have been nice. Obviously you can see the pilot and the co-pilot externally, but no options to do so internally. And given the overall level of quality of the Vision Jet, I was quite surprised to see that that wasn't an option. There are just 1 or 2 features as well. We mentioned the headphones, for example. It would be nice to just be able to click on a click spot there. The same is true as well, for example, of the caps pin. It would have been nice to just be able to click on the pin itself. And on the subject of caps, again, one slight weakness with the product. It would have been nice if the system had been modelled. I gather that the ballistic parachute has actually only been used on the Vision Jet twice in the real world, so it's obviously not an essential system. But since it is somewhat of a quirky system, and we know it can be modelled in the sim, as we saw with the FS Reborn Sting S4. I would have liked to have seen Cap's model, but again, it's by no means a deal breaker with the aircraft. In terms of FPS, the Vision Jet does cause a little bit of a hit, but that is to be expected with all of the glass screens of course. I was getting about 68 FPS in the aircraft versus around 88 FPS in the default Cessna 152 under the same conditions. So about a 20 FPS drop there, which again I would say is significant, but of course it does depend on your system configuration as well. In terms of my positives, I have to say pretty much everything that we haven't covered already. Firstly, I think the product is very reasonably priced for what you get, so once again it is great to see FlightFX bringing us another quality, value for money add-on. Texturing and modelling, very hard to fault there. I haven't really found any rough details, lots of nice little added extras as well. For example, up in the cockpit we have the Bose headsets, and we've already taken a look at those. Externally we have all of the fixtures and fittings that we're expecting, including the customisable baggage. And as you can see here also, we have a protective cover available if you want to fit that. Internally we have the configurable cabin, and again nice details down the back with, for example there, the pull down screen. So the modelling is excellent, the texturing matches up very nicely as well. The cockpit looks incredibly smart, incredibly slick. Everything is textured so that it does have a feeling of presence to it, and nice detailing as well. For example, there are some fingerprints, some smudges on the screens. Subtly done though as well, which is nice. Sometimes these things do get a little bit overdone. You'll only notice them really under certain lighting conditions. Aircraft systems, also very nice. Of course I'm not all that familiar with the SF50 or indeed the Garmin G3000, but as demonstrated earlier on, although we are essentially using the default Garmin G3000, once again there is a lot of customization there, so it really does make the jet feel bespoke, and gives the jet a very nice level of fidelity, I think, at this particular price point. I really like how easy the Cirrus is to operate. Again, it's a little bit like a flying iPad. It gives it a slightly different feel, and again, diving into all the MFD menus is quite interesting, quite good fun. The aircraft's flight model, despite having some of the usual Microsoft Flight Simulator limitations there, pretty good overall I think. Definitely, again, I preferred it to the Honda jet. The aircraft feels a little bit touchy on the controls with initial movements, but overall it does have a nice feeling to it in terms of manual flight. The jet was easy to hand fly, very easy to trim out as well. I did find you had to be pretty proactive on the throttle to maintain the speed, but that may well be true to life of the aircraft. The Vision Jet was very nice to taxi, felt pretty good during the takeoff, the rudder felt reasonable, a little bit heavy on the stick during rotation perhaps. A surprisingly shallow but I believe accurate climb angle initially to get the speed up. Once you've got the flaps in and you've reduced the drag, the jet does climb pretty nicely. The Vision Jet actually cruises at a really nice high speed, you can get up to good altitude as well. So I think it's a really nice option for the sort of flying that we did here today. And once again, I assume it's a bit of a rich man's toy, so why not recreate those sorts of flights here in the sim. In terms of performance as well, the aircraft seemed to perform pretty closely to the numbers given in the manual. The manual, on that note, was very slick, very well made, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more aircraft data. For example, it gave basic fuel figures there, so it looked as though the jet did perform to those in terms of fuel burn throughout our flight. But having had a quick flick through, I couldn't see any information there in terms of, for example, performance tables on takeoff speeds, optimal cruise altitudes. And I felt that the manual leaned much more towards telling you about the product as opposed to actually how to fly the aircraft. The sounds, we didn't mention all that much in the end during the flight, but once again they are absolutely excellent. The engine sounds are very nice, the overall ambience as well in the cockpit is great. For example, turning on the batteries there, you can hear the avionics fans spooling up. Switch sounds were good, as indeed were all of the extra details, for example bringing in the gear, bringing in the flaps. Very nice sounds from the developers, and as always with a good sound pack, it really makes the jet feel just that much more immersive. Lastly, just touching on the G3000 once again, currently of course we are using the default G3000. I gather that Working Title are going to be improving that over time, and from what I've read online, the aircraft will be made compatible with future improvements, so that's great. That should go to make the Cirrus jet all the better still. Anyway, that just about covers everything that I have to say here today. Once again, I think the Cirrus SF50 a really nice option in the sim. Not necessarily the type of aircraft that I enjoy personally, but certainly if business jets are your thing, this is a really nice option. The Vision Jet, of course, pretty unique as well in terms of design, so I think that makes it all the more interesting. The aircraft is a very high quality product at a very reasonable price, so once again it's really nice to see FlightFX continuing to deliver. I do hope that you found the video interesting and to be of use. If you did, then please consider giving it a like. If you want to see more content from the channel, then please consider subscribing as well. As ever, a very big thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support, thoroughly appreciated. I do hope that all of you are having a great day. Wherever you are, take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.